Hey everyone. I wanted to get this recording out. When I was hopping into the organizational change plan part one and part two, I realized how crunchy the language was and not it wasn't updated in the PDF version, so I had to copy and paste into a whole new thing and reformat it because the lead faculty had dumped all that in again as a PDF. So apologies, not trying to make excuses or anything like that, but I appreciate your patience with me because I wanted this to make sense to you since it didn't make sense to me. I figured that wouldn't be helpful for anybody. So let me go ahead. I'm going to share my screen and we will dive in. I'm going to just do part one today, just because part two I need to do a little bit more finagling with. And I appreciate your patience on that again too as well. So I think if you go into, gonna go home, gonna view as you as a student. Cool. So if I go into assignments and I'm taking a look at uh, the organization change plan, part one. That's what we're talking about today. Okay. Um, you've got your key leader interview that's due April 13th. You've got the organization change plan part two, which I'll do a separate thing for. We've already got a recording for the key leader interview. The organization change plan that's due May 4th. I might move that up a little bit. I don't know. Give me some feedback. I'm flexible on timing. I just want to make sure that y'all can um, have enough time to get that turned in, and then I can give feedback in case y'all want to turn in again. I don't anticipate there being any issues, but we'll see. Okay. Um, these are just overviews, and I did not realize that they were showing up as undated assignments, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'll go ahead and delete those two because it's essentially just what I've put here and here already. So let's go ahead and click in. So this is the first part of your organizational change plan. So what does that mean? So you've assessed your organization and now you want to put together an idea, like a change plan proposal. Um, we're not talking anything major here. You're not actually going to implement this plan. I want to say those two things very clearly again at the beginning here. Um, this again is kind of like a scaffolding assignment um, for your capstone. Like, so this is basically what you're going to be doing in this class, models what you're going to be doing in capstone one, where you get the background, do all this background stuff, and then you put together an idea of what you want to do for your capstone project, and then you do that in the second part. So we're doing the first part only. You're not actually going to do the things unless you want to. Like, cool, if you have the capacity to do that, but that's not part of your assignments, okay? No extra credit for that, um, that kind of thing. Um, so this is due March 9th. If you need some flexibility around that, let me know. The purpose of this assignment is to help you clarify your community in need, or the community that this need has been identified for. Uh, I'm sorry, I said community in need. You're clarifying an organizational or community need. Well, and you're beginning to shape a justice-centered change idea around and grounded in your role, context, and consultation. So these also have to be actionable. That's another thing we're looking at. Like, this is kind of why I'm giving you this paper now, because I want you to think about the change that you want to try to implement or, think about in the context of this assignment. It's also something that's got to be doable, right? We're not talking about moving mountains. We're not talking about, completely rechanging, or changing up organizational structure, anything like that. We're talking something that you could theoretically implement in your role as you currently stand within the organization. Um, so yeah, what we're doing here is a 2 to 3 page paper that addresses all of the following. So, The first part, just your name and organization, like, and then the mission. So this is kind of like a brief summary of what you just did with your organization assessment, okay? You just want to refresh my memory as I'm going into the paper here about, what your organization is, what y'all do, the mission there. So brief description there. Then you're going to talk about the organizational demographics. So describe the demographics of both staff and constituents served. So in week six's lecture, we talked about primary and secondary data. We would be pulling from secondary data sources potentially for this. If your organization already has a compilation of, data that they've collected that you have access to on their materials available online, or just because you are, based in the organization, that's cool. And you just want to identify populations specifically who have been historically marginalized or disproportionately impacted. Um, Use and cite at least one data source. Again, this could be potentially a secondary data source. Your role. You want to describe your role within the organization, including your key activities and responsibilities. I don't expect like a full job description, but like talk to me like this whole thing is telling a story, right? So here's my organization, and here's what they're all about. Here is the population we serve or the populations we serve, and how they have been impacted, within the context of this organization and what we do. uh, I work as XYZ. I do these things, which, like, you're setting up to um, tell us what the need is that you're going to be addressing, right? So, I'm a frontline worker, or like I do intakes, and in the uh, like I welcome people when they first come into our center. I, direct them to whatever resources they need. If they're here for an appointment, I make sure to let the person know who they're seeing, that the person that their appointment's here. Um, like those kinds of things, right? So give me the context of how you identified this need based on your role, right? Or what you do and how you've identified this need, right? Um, which leads us right into the next portion here. Uh, you want to identify one unmet organizational or community need, and you're going to examine this need using a justice-centered and equity-focused lens. So if we go back here, right? So if it's specifically coming up that, all of your materials in your waiting area are only in English, and you have a good portion of Spanish or other Spanish speaking or other languages that folks utilize. I'm in Rhode Island. French Creole is utilized a lot here. We have so many different language. Portuguese is so big out here. So having multiple like resources that are actually in a language that people can utilize, right, and actually benefit from. If, English isn't their preferred language, or is not, something they've learned to read or write in, right? Um, so that would be, for example, an unmet need that if I was in this imaginary scenario, one of the admin people at the front welcoming folks, I've noticed that, we have a lot of Spanish speaking individuals, but when they come in, I don't have the ability of giving them the resources that I can give to our English speaking community members that come in, because we don't have them, you know? Or I've noticed that our resources that we have available don't reflect the community members that we're serving. Like, is it just white people on the front of covers? Which, in parts of Colorado, I guess that would potentially make sense, but who is the community that you're serving, and are they reflected in the materials available and posted up, right? Around the office, around um where they are engaging, right? Will they inherently feel welcomed because they see themselves, be it, different families, like, adoptive families, or family members that, single parents, same-sex couples, right? Like whoever your demographic is, whoever your organization is serving, are they reflected in the materials and in the way that the space is presented, right? Like when you walk into a space, like I can tell if, as a queer person, I can tell if an organization has put forth effort to put a flag up to say, hey, we're queer friendly, right? Um, that's not always like the main indicator or as whether or not it's a safe space, but it helps, it's an indicator, right? Um, so after I identifying the unmet need, you then go into your proposed change idea. So, okay, so we've identified the fact that our materials that we have available in um, our kind of waiting area uh, don't reflect the individuals and community that we're serving, right? So my proposed change idea would be to um, either, make sure, like, depending on what was available through the organization. If it's like a bigger organization where we're just one location, I would ask us to order and have on hand, resources that are in the different languages that, the community we served would benefit from, like, Spanish, like here it would be Portuguese and French Creole. But, in Colorado, it would most likely be Spanish. Um, so like that would be a thing. Or trying to translate, or if you are a Spanish speaker, translating documents or the resources that are available to um you know Spanish, for example, so that they can be accessible to the Spanish speaking population um that you're serving, if that makes sense. So you would explain that, describe the idea, and then you're going to talk about the intended outcomes. So why does this change matter? Why is it important? Describe what you expect to see if the change is implemented, and explain how this effort expands equity and addresses social justice within the organization. Um, this could even be as simple as like, we have a coffee bar, but it doesn't have tea. And we have a lot of folks who don't do caffeine or what have you, based on the populations we serve. Or if it's, if you do groups, um, wanting to provide snacks that meet everybody's needs. So like making sure there's a gluten-free option so that somebody doesn't feel left out if they are gluten-free. Um, those kinds of things. Like this does not have to be, if you've ever seen the movie Pay It Forward, it doesn't have to be the movie Pay It Forward. I want to be clear about that. Um, but it is intended to be something that could potentially be actionable, especially with where you're at and what your role is in the organization. Okay. Um, so yeah, talk about the intended incomes there. And the last piece is you want to chat about this idea with your supervisor or somebody within your organization who you feel comfortable talking to about this. Again, not that you're going to actually implement it, but to talk about your ideas in relation to this assignment. So in this section, you're going to describe the discussion that you had with a field supervisor or organizational leader. Um, how were your ideas received? What suggestions or recommendations did that individual or individuals have that may be incorporated? Describe your plan for ongoing communication, you know? Um, so again, this would be if you were implementing it. Okay. Your grading rubric is right here. You're getting 1 point for the uh, first four areas here, and then 2 points each for the outline of the proposed change plan, the intended outcomes and equity impact, and then the supervisor or organizational consultation and communication plan, those parts. I created another template for you for my sanity and also just for y'all to work from in case APA is not, easily accessible for you. I know this stuff is should theoretically be easily like discoverable, but for me, this is kind of how I approached these assignments when I was in school. I would just create the body of the paper, like with, your paper's title, and then what I knew were going to be my section headers. So each of these could be at least a paragraph each, right? So they're their own heading. Um, I guess these should probably be more centered here. Apologies. My brain is a little fried, still. And then, your references, because you got to have at least one data point that you reference in this, okay? And I'm also linking again the helpful tips and tricks for your assignments. Here's your APA formatting and style guide from Purdue OWL. They have a vidcast on YouTube. They have an APA sample paper for students, like a student sample paper. If you need an actual visual, it also has bubbles that comments of why it is the way it is. Some more APA different playlists for you. Again, if you have the ability of doing Zotero or something similar, to me, this is like the best thing that has ever happened to me, like when I was in grad school, was just being able to track my resources. Obviously, you want to uh, go in and make sure that they pull the information correctly, but to have that be automatic is super helpful. I did also update the I updated this. This was the big thing I had to do. So this is the overall organizational change plan assignment. And then part one, which that's the one that's due Monday, March 9th. And then part two, that's the one that's due at the end of the semester. I'm going to do a separate recording for this one, just because I needed to go back and redo the Imagine piece, and you can see the formatting is still off here. So I'm going to fix that and get that in for you. Okay. Yep. And then this is your template. We already talked about that. Cool. I'm going to stop sharing. Whew. Hopefully y'all are doing okay. Uh, I know it seems like this semester in particular has been pretty heavy and rough, so be kind to yourselves. Thank you again for your patience with me. I will try to figure out a good time for this other recording. Don't forget to schedule your individual one-on-one meetings with me. Those are due before we go on spring break, which is, I know, late March, but again, most of you have gotten those done and out of the way, so I appreciate that. Yeah, see you again in the next one.